Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik with Figure It Out Productions. The following video is part of our Quick Shoot series.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and I got a package that I'm going to open up for you. Now this one is unique because, alright, so it's not uncommon that viewers will contact me and say like, hey, I have something, and they'll send me a package, which you don't have to do. No one ever has to do that. And every time somebody contacts me, I tell them exactly that. Some people do still, and others of course say, you know, you're right, that doesn't really make sense, and then they don't send me anything. Either way is fine with me. This, however, was sent to me by a guy named Tim, and I have to admit, he was pretty unique. He contacted me and he said, you know, there's something I want to send you, and of course, as always, I said, you know, you don't have to do that. And he said, look, I know you always say that, and I get it, but I'm not one of them, I'm not doing that. In this case, what's going on is I want you to make a video of this. If I send this to you, I expect a video. I see this more as a business arrangement. I basically want you to advertise my product. So I said, all right, because the product he was talking about was actually something I was pretty interested in. So I'm just being transparent with you guys. He sent me this so that I could show it to you guys as essentially a commercial. So I will plug his eBay page. It'll be in the description. And we will basically see if I can actually say the product is worth it and I would recommend it. But regardless, his page will be in the description. And it should be worth it. It sounds like it's going to be really, really cool. So let's go ahead and open it up, shall we? Now we have the scissors here. So cut right into this in the box. Now, you might already know what it is because I'm sure I put it in the title, but yeah, so it should be pretty cool. I'm hopeful. Now, he ships from inside the U.S., so my fellow Americans, you'll have the best deal on shipping. The rest of the world, you know, it varies, of course. Canadians probably not too bad, but etc. But anyway, let's get this open here. And inside, I think, oh, it's packed very well. Let's put this off the side, make sure there's nothing else in here. Nope, it's just this, the main unit. Get all the bubble wrap off. Well, I'll say this for him. He obviously knows how to pack things well, so I guess you can trust that. All right, and here it is. This is the console. This is the unit. This is what he sent. Now, if you're not familiar with what this is, it is an SNES Jr. The SNES Jr., let's do a little brief history first. The SNES Jr. was a revision of the Super Nintendo released in like 1997, I think it was. It was really only around for a year. It was a budget console. Basically, Nintendo put it out there really in the middle of the 5th generation. You know, when the PS1, the N64 even, and the Saturn were really in their prime, Nintendo put this out. They have a history of doing that, like with the Wii Mini and with the NES Top Loader. And like those, Nintendo wanted to put out a budget console so that people who were in the new generation but couldn't quite afford it, they would be able to go back and basically pick up the old console and pick up a lot of the old games that are sitting around and finally get to experience that console. But when they do that, in order to keep the price low, in this case I believe it retailed for $99 US, and it came with Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. And what they'll do is they'll take features out that don't need to be there so that they can save on production costs. In the case of the SNES Jr., they took out the expansion port that was on the bottom. They also stripped off the RF port completely. They took out the LED, you know, the light when you turn the console on, the light comes on. The SNES Jr. doesn't have that. Inside, they made a couple other changes as well. They stripped out the S-Video support, and they stripped out the RGB SCART support. Now that's the big one, because without that, in modern times, SNES Juniors are not really that sought after, because collectors want them because they're a nice little novelty piece. Like, I already have 2 of these things, but I never use them, ever, because they don't support anything other than composite, which is the cable I'm sure you're all very familiar with. It's that, you know, the red, white, and yellow one. Really, that sucks because composite is a terrible, terrible, terrible format to play your games with because it looks like shit. However, we didn't really know this in the 90s, at least I know I didn't in North America. I'm sure a lot of people around my age bracket probably didn't know this either. Was that a lot of these consoles, going all the way back to the Sega Master System, are capable of looking fantastic when they are connected correctly. So the format that I'm constantly recommending to people, and I will do this in this video as well, and that's kind of the key point here, is a format called RGB SCART. Well, I should say SCART, but running in RGB mode. Now, quick history lesson on SCART, because I've already talked about that like 1,000 times, but you know, just in case you don't know, SCART is a video connection, basically. It's a type of cable. You plug it in the back of the console and then you plug it into your television. Except We never had that format in North America. Ever. There is no television, and maybe some rare, unique one somewhere, but basically it was never on any American television, this format you could just plug in your TV. We never had that option. However, all of the consoles themselves, for the most part, supported it. They had it built inside, so if you had the cables, you'd be good to go. And that's awesome, because now, fast forward into the future when we're all aware of this format, what you can do is, an American or a Canadian, you can buy these cables, you can plug them in, but rather than plugging it directly into your television, you take this cable, you plug it into this little SCART to HDMI, like scaler or converter, whatever you want to think of it as. I've done a whole video on that as well. And you take that, and then basically take SCART to HDMI. You plug the HDMI thing in your television. It looks fucking great. It looks absolutely stellar. The picture quality is so unreal. You would never believe these consoles were capable of this, really without modification, all the way back when the Sega Master System came out in 1986. It would blow your mind. So it's really sad that we never got that format. But now flash forward to this, the point of all of this. Now the SNES, the stock one that we're all more familiar with, is capable of supporting not only S-Video but also RGB SCART. And when they of course built this, like I said, they stripped that out. So that sucks. However, Tim, who of course is the guy who did this modification, I'm not sure if I mentioned his name, but I think I did, but Tim, he basically modified the console to put not only S-Video but RGB SCART back into the console. He also, just for the hell of it, put an LED in it, and I guess he lets you customize the LED between a few different colors. I believe I picked red. Funny thing is, he sent this to me a couple of months ago, but I've been traveling so much I have not had the chance to sit down and shoot this video, so I couldn't open it and check it out. So, now I can finally do that. Now, before I actually test it out though, I had a question for him that I'm sure a lot of you would ask me, which is, well, that's neat, but what's the point? If all the stock SNES consoles out there already support it, why does this matter? Sure, you could point out that, stock SNESs, turned yellow, they're rare, they're uncommon, they're becoming more expensive, all that, and that maybe having this is a nice alternative. Yes, that is true, but the real reason is, when I asked him that, he said because the RGB SCART, once you've modified it, it looks way better than the stock SNES. Which I was like, really? Because I found that a little hard to believe. But it turns out that's true. I actually remembered that I did a video on cleaning one of these things. And just about like every third comment in that video, as I remember it, people were like, why didn't you do the RGB mod? It's so much better. Like, you could have done, like, as if I could do it. I don't have those kind of skills. And kudos to people like Tim who can, because that's impressive. But, yeah, so he's basically, as far as I understand, he went ahead, he modded this, and so now it can do RGB SCART, and it should, by all accounts, look better than a stock SNES. And that, my friends, is what we are here to find out. So, now you know where you can get one, but I want to test this thing out and make sure I can actually tell you I would recommend getting one. Let's turn the console on, and then we'll take a look at this, and we can see that it says the source is SCART RGB, which does mean RGB is in fact working. So I'm going to show you some gameplay, sort of. I'm basically just going to show you this title screen so that you can see the difference between various versions of the console and various connection types. You'll always be able to see in the upper left corner what format we're using and what version of the console. So this is a stock SNES running through composite. Now this is actually a stock SNES Jr running through composite, and I have to admit the video quality off of it is better than the stock one, which the large fat model, which I honestly was surprised by. I did not really expect that to be the case, but it is, so there you go. Now this is of course running through composite on the SNES Jr that has been modded, and it's you'd have to go back and look, but it does improve a little bit. There is more definition, and I gotta admit, for composite this actually looks not too bad. Now you're going to see this is it running through S-Video. This is a stock SNES, the fat model running through through S-Video. And you have to remember that the Junior doesn't natively support it, so I can't do that, but I will show you what the modded Junior looks like in a moment. In case you're curious why I picked this game, I wanted to avoid a strike from Nintendo. They don't own this game. This is the SNES Jr with S-Video, by the way. It definitely has a higher definition there, not resolution, but like it's more of a clear image. You see more than that. So yeah, I didn't want to get a strike, but also, big fan of Michael Jordan, so I thought this would be perfect. And the title screen never ends.
So now this is the stock SNES, the fat model running through RGB. Now the colors are better, however it appears to be a little bit darker than the S video. So you kind of take your preference, whatever you prefer there. But this is running through. That's right there is the SNES Jr, the modded one, and it definitely looks the best of all of them. More so than I had expected. However, the difference between the two seems to basically be the brightness. It's not astonishing. That's back to composite. What a jump, right? So this is composite on a fat SNES. And now this again is RGB running through the modded SNES Jr. What a difference. And in case you're curious, again, quick comparison. This is RGB on the stock SNES, the fat one, and back to the RGB on the SNES Jr. So now let's wrap this up. I'm going to tell you guys my final thoughts.
Right here, this is the console that was modified by Tim. This is a stock unit. You virtually can't tell the difference. Tim did an unbelievable fucking job with this modification. See, I'm used to seeing a lot of consoles that when they're modified in some way, there's a really obvious tell. You know, they'll have a switch on it, or the bulb, if it's like a custom LED, will be a giant thing that sticks out. You know, stuff like that. It's really nearly impossible to tell the difference between the two. The only thing that gives it away on the surface is the LED, which makes sense because, of course, this one, your stock one, doesn't have it. But even the way he did the LED was really subtle and impressive. See, there's these two little holes on an SNES right by the on and off switch. All he did was just kind of drill all the way through one of those holes and put a tiny little LED under it. Gives off a nice bright, light that you can tell it's on. And I gotta say, that's really impressive. I think the LED mod he did was perfect. So definitely aces there. Another thing he did that I guess would kind of give it away, but I requested this, and I don't know who wouldn't. He did essentially a region-free mod. It's difficult to use that term because that's not really accurate, but let me explain. So when it comes to the Super Nintendo and the Super Famicom, the Super Nintendo, electronically, the European version is very different. So its games will not work on an American unit. It will not work on a Japanese unit. However, the North American unit and Japanese unit electronically are identical. The only thing that's different about them is basically the shape of the console and the shape of the cartridges. So Nintendo's simple regions lock method for keeping Japanese games out of North American units was to basically put a couple of plastic tabs in the back of the console so that when you take a Japanese game, you try to put it in, it prevents it. It blocks it from being able to get into the cartridge port. I mean, if you took the lid off and plugged it in, it would work fine. There's no issues. It's just those plastic bits. He went ahead and removed those, so it fits in, no problem, and it works perfectly. No issues at all. And I should have mentioned that before. I'm sorry, I forgot that he had done that. But there you go. It also plays all the Japanese games. So now on to the meat and potatoes of this, the RGB SCART mod. So let's put it this way. He did a fantastic job with this mod, considering this console's not even supposed to support it. It looks great. I was directly comparing it to a stock SNES, and it's definitely as good. It is actually better. But if you are already using a stock SNES that is using RGB SCART, specifically that you're using RGB SCART, the upgrade may not really be worth it to you. But if you're anyone else, even if you're using just composite and you're like, maybe I want to upgrade to RGB, definitely worth it. But there's one other bonus feature of this modification that did fucking blow my mind and made me really, really happy. So this is probably not an issue that will affect a lot of people, although I do know it does affect some, because even as recently as a week ago, I got an email asking me if they knew the solution to this particular problem, and until now, I didn't have a fucking answer. So here's the deal. I have what's called a SCART switch. Okay, so SCART is, as I said, it's a nice format. It gives you a nice image, but it's actually not very well built from a construction standpoint. It breaks relatively easily. You can plug it in and unplug it so many times before it kind of stops working. So when I first started getting into SCART, a bunch of people in the UK in particular gave me some advice. They said, buy a SCART switch. Now a SCART switch is simple. It's just a little box basically, and you plug 4 different or 5 different or however many ports it has on your particular unit, you plug those all into the SCART switch. So you'll take, you know, the console like cable straight from the console into the switch, and you do that multiple times, and then it has a cable sticking out of it that you plug into the HDMI to, or SCART to HDMI box. There's no lag, there's none of that shit. It's just a nice convenient way to bypass the signal and not have to, you know, disconnect and reconnect all these cables. Every console I use it with, it works great. All the Sega stuff, the PlayStation 1, the Atari Jaguar, all that stuff works fine. No issues. For whatever damn reason, the Super Nintendo will not cooperate with it. I've tried every Super Nintendo I have. I've tried every Super Famicom I have. I've even tried the PAL Super Nintendo. Won't fucking work. They all work fine if you connect it directly to the SCART to HDMI device, but if you go through that switch, they never function. Guess what does? I know. I was happy. I was really impressed by that because I was like, damn, awesome! Because my only alternative to this the whole time has been that I actually bought a second one of those SCART to HDMI devices so that really it would just have just the SNES on it, which I didn't like doing because it's a waste of space, it's a waste of power, it's a waste of resources, etc. It was a waste of money in that sense too. But now what of course that'll do is free me up to like take it out of there, and I'll have a spare SCART to HDMI device in the future, I guess. And I can plug this into that system, which I'm very happy about because I couldn't do that before. So that's, I know that's a small problem to probably most of you, but it is there. It does exist. I'm yet to find anyone who has a SCART switch that doesn't have that issue. Now, if you do, congratulations. I didn't know that, but mine didn't work, and anyone I've talked to about it, couldn't get it to work. So this works, and that makes me happy. So there you go. So overall, I would say that this is definitely a recommended thing to get. In most contexts. The only one where I can't say I would recommend it is if you already are using RGB SCART with a stock SNES. The upgrade may not be worth it unless you just really like the design of the SNES Jr. It is a nicer, smaller design. It's sleek, and once it has those customizations in it, it is actually the better version of the console. But that's obviously up to personal preference there. So there you go. Thank you, Tim. You did an amazing job on this. And if you want to check it out, again, I have an eBay link to his page in the description. I believe at the time I make this, he only has like 10 units left, so take a look. But yeah, again, thank you, Tim, and thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all later.